I just realized I was muted. So I'll just repeat everything that I was just saying. This test today, I'm just going to be doing magsorcs and magicka Wardens primarily, and hopefully I'll be able to get to a stam DPS. I'm not sure exactly which class. Probably stam blades again. It's pretty much going to be depending on how long each of the tests take, how long it takes to answer questions and things like that, and then when I am sufficiently hungry enough to go eat dinner. But to start things off first with your question, Andre, about Reliquin, Arms of Reliquin on a Stam Blade. I have done a lot of testing on Reliquin on the various different stamina DPS classes, and right now Reliquin is overperforming is probably the best way to describe it. The set itself is doing more DPS than Endless Hail is, which, I mean, it's okay. I like the fact that they have a new set that stamina DPS can use, but at the same time it feels like it's definitely overperforming by a significant margin. It definitely needs to be toned down. And yeah, Reliquin does proc Selines. I'm not 100% sure if that's intended or not, because Reliquin is a proc, it's not a melee attack, but for some reason it's proccing Selines, so I guess we'll get confirmation or not on Monday when they do the patch notes, hopefully. In terms of what you missed so far, you didn't really miss that much. I only just started my testing, and I was primarily looking at Accelerate, how that performs compared to Bound Aegis. So I was just going to do a couple of tests with Bound Aegis and then take a look at how that performs compared to Accelerate and everything like that. So for sets, I'm just going with the standard sets setup right now, so I'm just doing 2 Lambris, 5 Julianos, and then 5 Acuity. I might swap Julianos out for Sororia. Sororia is really good for stack and burn fights, but it's not going to be so useful for fights where you have to move around a lot, so that's kind of my only reservation with Sororia right now. So I'm just going to pull it out right now. So Sororia here. They said they were going to change it to Minor Slayer for the 3-piece, I believe, but I'm not 100% certain if like right now it says Spell Crit for the 3-piece. I don't know if that's intended or if that's just a glitch. When you try it on combat metrics, it actually doesn't show up. Minor Slayer doesn't actually show up. So I'm thinking it's just something that they forgot to code in, but I guess we'll have to wait and see for Monday. But Sororia is the new trial set, so you will have to do Cloud Arrest in order to get it. So I was starting off with Julianos just because that's pretty much like the tried and true for Magic DPS. Julianos is still going to be probably the best set next to Mechanical Acuity, especially now that Julia Crafting is out. So I'm not going to be using Zon on a magsorc. That is mainly because the whole purpose of bringing a magsorc is to have range DPS. So using Zon requires you to be in melee range, so that doesn't really make much sense to do Zon on a magsorc. Plus Momo, you can't use Asylum Staff and have 2 5-piece sets. That would be 13 set pieces and you only have 12 set pieces. So if you're going to be using an Asylum Staff, you're going to be giving up either the Monster Helm or you're going to be giving up one of the 5-piece sets and be using Willpower instead. So that's why you can't go with Sororia, Acuity, Zon, and Asylum Maelstrom. There's just not enough set pieces in order to do that. Stamsorcs, yes. Stamsorcs, I've had the best results with the Psijic Spammable, which is the other morph of Elemental Weapon, so Crushing Weapon. I've had better luck with that compared to Shrouded Daggers. You can't really compare the two right now because I'm not on the stamina spec, but you can see here 3372 for 2160 stam compared to Shrouded Dagger, which would do 2908 on 2822 stam. However, the difference between the Spammable and Shrouded Daggers is that Shrouded Daggers does have additional cleave, so I'm thinking if you want to do Shrouded Daggers, do it for trash pulls or fights where you have ads, and then swap to Crushing Weapon for your single target DPS. The added advantage of using Crushing Weapon is that there's also a heal associated with it, so you don't have to slot Surge anymore, you don't necessarily need to slot Vigor anymore as long as your weaving is good, and it only affects light attacks, so something like a Stam DK. If you are going with a heavy attack build on a Stam DK, Crushing Weapon probably isn't going to be the best choice there. Stam DKs too, we're not 100% sure if we're going to be staying with a heavy attack build or a light attack build. I haven't actually tried out Stam DK on the Summerset PTS yet. Poseidon Burning Spellweave on Magicka Dragon Knight, that's what I was using when we were doing Cloud Rest the other day on Monday. Works pretty well. I tried Burning Spellweave and Acuity afterwards, and I actually did better with Acuity Burning Spellweave on a Magicka Dragon Knight. So I think Acuity Spellweave is probably going to be best in slot for DKs, along with Zahn. But Silks of the Sun and Burning Spellweave is also a good option to go from. The difference was actually pretty small. It was on a raid test, I think it was like 1 or 2k, so it's within like margin of error there. So for those of you guys who don't know, that was a Sororia proc there. They changed it from the original set. So the original set did damage, and now it does. It gives you a spell damage buff. It does seem like the stream is lagging a little bit here. Checking OBS right now. Doesn't seem like. Okay. I don't know, it might be on YouTube's end where you're seeing that little bit of lag there. So let's go ahead and try Sororia compared to Giuliano. So Sororia here, if you can stay in the proc itself, it boosts your spell damage by a much larger margin than Giuliano's. Giuliano's is 299. If you can get all 20 stacks of spell damage here with Sororia, it's actually 600 spell damage. You do lose spell crit, but you gain spell damage compared to Giuliano's. So Giuliano's is here. So you do lose that like 3.4% spell crit, but you gain that additional spell damage instead. And of course, Sororia is only really strong if you are not in a mobile fight. So if you're in a fight where you're going to have to move around a lot, then Sororia is going to lose a lot of potency there. Let's go ahead and do this test out. Right now, it seems like Sororia is probably going to be best in slot if you're going to be standing still like I am right now. So Sororia is going to basically be artificially inflated for the most part in solo parses, just because of the fact that on a solo parse you don't have to play mechanics, you get to basically stand in one spot. In an actual raid though, I haven't been playing Magicka outside of Mag DKs in a raid scenario here on the Summerset PTS, but it seems like, at least for Mag DKs, you're going to be wanting to do something like Acuity and Burning Spellweave. So Acuity does seem to be performing better than Minor Slayer sets. However, I haven't been able to test Moon Dancer. I do want to try out Moon Dancer and see how that performs. That would be the only Minor Slayer set that I would consider using outside of like Master Architect, for example, on a like Magicka Warden or Magicka Nightblade. You obviously wouldn't be able to really make use of Master Architect on like a Sorc or anything, because our ultimates cost much more than Templars, Wardens, and Nightblades. Alright, so that was a Sororia parse there. And as you will be able to see, we're able to get about 88% uptime on Sororia. That's like the max that I've seen, like 88, 87%. So that works out to be like about a, it's about like a 530 spell damage. But again, you're pretty much stationary during a dummy parse. So Sororia is not necessarily going to give you accurate results in an actual raid scenario where you might be moving around a lot, because the buff does only last for 5 seconds. So you do need to move back into the ring within 5 seconds. Alkosh is not a DPS set. Alkosh, so the thing with Alkosh is that the proc sets cannot crit. So Reliquin right here, while it's very, very strong, none of the hits will actually crit. Let me see if I have a Reliquin parse saved up. I should have one here. Yeah, so Arms of Reliquin right here. So this is a Stamblade parse that I did with Arms of Reliquin a couple days ago. So you can see here that it doesn't crit at all. So any sort of proc sets doesn't crit at all. So Celine's, for example, a proc set doesn't crit. So I have 19 hits, but none of them are crits. Reliquin, 173 hits, and none of them are crits. So Alkosh, same thing. It's a proc set, so it won't be able to crit. And that basically pretty much reduces the potential of Alkosh. So if we take a look at Alkosh here, where is medium armor, medium trial sets? So Alkosh, let me get the actual numbers for you guys. So Alkosh, you can see here, does about, when it's golded out completely, it does about like 16k physical damage for the damage over time component, and then about like a 2.1k, so combined it's about 118k proc over 10 seconds, which if you work out DPS, if you're able to maintain that consistently, that only works out to be roughly about 1.8k DPS, which is really, really low. Of course, the upside is you do have that physical spell resistance debuff. However, the other thing too is Alkosh is reliant on synergies. So as a DPS, really the only synergies you'll be getting are going to be conduits and orbs. Shards are typically going to be reserved for tanks, but you can grab shards too. So you know, tanks generally have better access to synergies than a DPS does. So that's why Alkosh is used a lot more on tanks than it is for standard DPS. So basically, Alkosh sucks as a DPS set because one, the proc itself can't crit, so the maximum DPS you'll be able to get from it is 1.8k roughly. And then the second thing is you, as a DPS, you're not going to necessarily be able to maintain that 100% uptime on it because you have to activate a synergy, and that's a little bit more difficult to do as a DPS compared to a tank. So Alkosh will probably never make its way onto any sort of stamina DPS. So back to magicka. So this was a Sororia parse and we pulled, let me actually pull up the parse now. So it pulled 38.9k, and yes, a lot of you guys have noticed that it's pretty much going to be a cheese parse because in a real trial scenario, you're not necessarily going to be able to stay still the whole time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a much more realistic test where I'll be standing still for some parts of it, but then I will also be moving around for some parts of it as well. Hopefully that will kind of give a better sense of the actual amount of DPS that Sororia will be able to provide to us. So that's kind of what I did the last stream when I used Sororia and tested it out. I was basically running around, basically making it so it can't stack as much. And I do know now why the stream buffer is kind of lagging a little bit. I do have a process running in one of my statistical software right now, and that's using up a good amount of CPU power. So that might be why the encoding is going to be a little bit slow for now. I expected it to be done by now, but it's been running for about 40 minutes now, so hopefully it's almost done. Let me just double check here, and I do need to have it running because it is something for my research. So yeah, so right now it's using up about 25% of my CPU power, so about the same amount as ESO. So hopefully it'll stop, but that's that's probably why the stream is kind of stop and go, a little bit stuttering here and there. So let's try it out, and so now I'm basically going to kind of mimic a little bit what an actual trials kind of situation is. So you'll be I'll be standing still for some parts of it, but for other parts I might move around to kind of imitate that. Oh, I have to play mechanics, like, oh, I'm a kiter for Maul in Rakat, for example, so I have to like kite the meteors around. Or, you know, you're up against Ohms in Asylum and you have to kite Storm the Heavens or something. So this will be a little bit more realistic, but still probably not entirely realistic here. So let's say I have to do some mechanics now, so I'm kiting meteors or something right now. Now meteors are done and I can basically go back to being stationary. Now let's say I have to kite meteors again. So now my proc ended up over here, so now I have to like move myself over so I can actually be in the proc. And I'll say again, gotta kite meteors or something. Alright, so meteors is done, so now we get to move back into the proc. Meteors again. So meteors again. So again, this is kind of like more realistic, but it's still probably not entirely accurate just because you might need to res people here and there. I also don't think that blockade was actually able to hit the dummy from way back there. So remember, if you lose your stacks, so the stacks last for 5 seconds, so if you manage to lose all of your stacks within those 5 seconds, you actually start all the way back down from 0. It doesn't, like, you don't lose them one at a time. Alkosh is not a DPS set, just like Night Mother's Gaze. For reasons that I described below, it is not a good DPS set. And there are much better sets you can run besides Alkosh that offer Minor Slayer VO, for example. So that was a fairly more realistic scenario there. So I was moving around a little bit here, but I was also able to stand still for some parts of it as well. So we can see here it's about a 35.3k. And if we take a look, we did manage to get all of our procs at some point, all of the stacks, but it was only 9% uptime. We only really managed to get really good uptime on like the, good being like over 50% on Sororia's boon times 9, which would be equivalent of 180 spell damage. So, is it 180 or is it something? I think it's 270 actually, because it's 30. Yeah, so 9 would be 270. So that's kind of what we're at in terms of like 50% uptime. So, in those fights where you have to move around a lot, Sororia's obviously going to lose a lot of its potential because you have to stay within that ring in order to get that stack. You leave it for 5 seconds, you lose all your stacks. It's not like it burns 1 stack every 5 seconds. So now let's compare this to Julianos, which is a very consistent buff. So Julianos, you lose the spell damage from Sororia, you gain the spell crit, and you lose a lot of spell damage in stand and stack fights, but you get a lot more consistent spell damage if you have to move around because the 5 piece is just a flat 299 spell damage instead. So now we're going to be doing 5 Julie and 5 Acuity. And yes, I will be doing Pet Sorcs as well at some point. And I'll probably be doing something similar to basically Necro Acuity instead of Julianos Acuity. I need to get ulti up. Yeah. Again, I apologize if the stream is kind of like lagging a little bit during the parses. I do have an R process running in the background, which is taking up a lot of CPU power right now. So the encoding is probably not going quite as fast as it used to. See if I can change that actually. I don't know if I can do it in the middle here. Probably can't. I don't think it will let me. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and try this out. So this is Julianos instead of Sororia, just to give you guys a comparison of how Julianos will perform as a more consistent buff compared to Sororia, kind of cheese buff where you're just standing there. I mean, it doesn't matter if that was their intent or not. It's a matter of, is it actually better than the other DPS sets available? And I mean, VO outperforms it, War Machine outperforms it, Acuity will outperform it. So, I mean, you can say Alkosh is a DPS set because it's a medium armor set, but in terms of actually being used as a DPS set, no one's going to be using it as a DPS set in competitive trials, or just trials in general, actually. I have not seen a single person run Alkosh on a DPS. So yes, I've seen in View weapons both morphs actually be used in place of a class spammable. So, for example, magsorc, or not magsorcs, because I'm on a magsorc. Mag Nightblades, for instance, we used to use something like funnel health, but the best parses that I've seen so far have actually been using elemental weapon. And then my best mag DK parses have also been with elemental weapon instead of whip. And the main reason for this, I believe, is due to the additional sustain, because elemental weapon is actually fairly cheap, and it does less damage than Force Pulse, but it's pretty comparable. The only thing that I haven't tried yet is on a Stam Nightblade having it replace Surprise Attack. I haven't tried that out yet. That 50k parse that I showed you earlier, that was with Surprise Attack as a spammable. So this is the Julianos parse. This is actually pretty close to what I've been doing with Julianos. So 36.5k-ish, roughly. So it's better than the previous Sororia parse where we were basically running around. This was 35.3. Compare that to Julianos here, so 36.5. But if you're able to do like a stack and burn fight where you're able to always get the Sororia proc and maintain that Sororia proc, then Sororia is definitely going to win out. It's almost 39k here. So that's basically what I'm able to conclude is basically for like stack and burn fights, Sororia is going to be very, very powerful. Um, but for fights where you have to move around a lot, you're probably going to be doing Julianos instead. At least on a non-pet build, and if you're using double Inferno. If you're using something like double Lightning, on the other hand, Natch is probably going to end up being better instead of Julianos, just because more of your damage is coming from shock damage instead. So like if you just basically replace light attacks, blockade, you replace heavy attack, fiery rage with shock damage, then you'll have a lot more shock damage here compared to fire damage. Okay, so this was a non-pet Sorc. This was with Acuity and Julianos. So the one thing I will make note of in terms of elemental weapons, Sustain feels a lot better compared to using Force Pulse. You won't have as much group utility because you're not going to be able to get a very good concussed or burning uptime comparatively without using something like a shock enchant or something. But this does allow you, using elemental weapons, does allow you to go with 5.5.2, because if you are going to be using Force Pulse, you're probably going to want to use the Asylum Destruction Staff instead, which basically limits you to 5.3 with the monster set. I will test actually the Asylum Staff right now. Where is it? Asylum. So we're going to be doing the Perfected Asylum. I know that's not entirely realistic, but we're going for the best case scenario here. We want to compare the best of the best to each other. And so then we're actually going to have to use, instead of Acuity Jewelry, we're going to have to use Willpower Jewelry instead. And of course we're going to swap these, trait change these to Bloodthirsty in order to keep things consistent, and also re-enchant all of this stuff. So I am still running 2 spell damage glyphs and 1 regen glyph, just because Sorc Sustain, even with elemental weapon, is still pretty bad. Like, I'm on a high elf running Witch Mothers, and I had to heavy attack several times there. So what a lot of Sorcs have been doing is either doing something like a regen glyph or using Absorb Magicka glyph instead. So I like my burning up time, so I just stick with the regen glyph on one of my jewelry pieces. Let's do jewelry. Willpower. See if I need to. Okay, no, I still have enough. That's good. Okay, so the idea here is to compare a Force Pulse build to an Elemental Weapon build, using 5-piece Julianos instead. I haven't seen any 50k parses from DKs or mag blades. The highest I've seen on a mag blade so far, I think, was from LZH. I think it was a 48k parse on a 6mm dummy, 48.6 or something like that. So still really, really high, but not quite 50k. I think the highest I've seen for a. I'm gonna swap my ultimates around. The highest I've seen for a mag DK parse was around 46 or 47k, so pretty close together. So that's something to keep in mind there. Sorcs are, yeah, they're around 40k right now. I'm also not the best Sorc. There's a lot of better Sorcs out there, so don't take my tests as representative of each other, of like what a Sorc can pull, like max. You can kind of look at the disparity between my parses, so like my Mag Nightblade, for instance. Let me pull up a Mag Nightblade parse. I think I have one saved somewhere. This is a Mag Nightblade parse from... Oh, this is from a while ago. So this was back when light attacks were still doing like much more damage than they used to. So I was hitting around 45.6. This was with... Let's see if I can figure this out. Acuity and Master Architect. So that's something also to keep in mind too, that Nightblades get the advantage of being able to use Master Architect. We're also using Zahn instead of Lambris, so with Lambris we'd be able to do a lot better. or with Zahn, I should say, we'd be able to do a lot better. If we had Major Slayer, we'd be doing a lot better. And we also could get Minor Berserk on Nightblades as well. So Nightblade parses are a little bit inflated just because they do have access to Minor Berserk and they have ready access to Major Slayer. And we're also able to use Zahn because we're assuming we'll be able to play in melee range compared to a magsorc, which I'm assuming we're going to be playing at ranged instead of at melee. So Zahn, you can see here, is about 3k DPS compared to Julianos or Lambris here. If we take a look at Lambris, it's 800 plus 640, so this is like around like 1400, so it's about half as much DPS compared to Zahn, so that's something to keep in mind there. How much should you be getting on your parts if you're using Acuity for Moondancer and Lambris? On a 6 million dummy, solo self-buffed, I'd be saying try to shoot for around like 30k or so. 30k is a good number to aim for. And once you're able to hit that, then you can go for something like 32 or 33k. I think the highest I've been able to hit with a setup like that was around 32 on a 6 mil self-buffed. Or maybe 33, I'm not 100% sure. You can tell already that the sustain is significantly worse on a Force Pulse build compared to a Ellie weapon. This sustain hurts me so much. Especially coming from a Mag Nightblade perspective, like the absolute garbage sustain on a Sorc is painful. This also doesn't help that Inferno staff heavy attacks feel like you're throwing like a ball of like molasses at them. It just feels so clunky and slow. Let's see if I can actually get to execute without like running out of magicka. Okay, there we go. Jeez. Okay, so this is the Perfected Asylum Staff parse. This is a Force Pulse parse here. This was with 5 Julianos, 3 Willpower, all Bloodthirsty, with the Perfected Inferno Asylum Staff. So we're sitting at 36.7, but if we take a look here, this was our 5 Julianos, 5 Acuity with using Elemental Weapon, pulled about 36.5, 36.4. But if we have to take a look at our debuffs out, this is going to be pretty important, mainly because with the Perfected Asylum Staff, on a solo parse at least, you're going to get a much higher minor vulnerability uptime. So you can see here we're sitting at 30% minor vulnerability uptime, but if we take a look at the Perfected parse, we have 57% minor vulnerability uptime. So that's a difference of 27%. So let's see, I'm going to do the math real quick. So that's 0.27 times 0.08. Then we multiply this entire number, doing this off screen, multiply that entire number by this parse, so 36,479, or I should say I should add 1 to that actually, 1 plus this. And so this parse, if we had identical minor vulnerability uptime, would be 37,267 DPS. So it does seem like the Perfected Asylum staff is gonna go out of style. 36.75 compared to 37,267. I'll actually swap over to that screen so you guys can see the actual math behind it. Alright, okay. So this is basically what I did here. So this 0.27 is coming from the difference in the 2 minor vulnerability uptime. So we have 30% for elemental weapon, then we have 57 for the Perfected Asylum staff, so we just subtract them, we get 0.27. Minor vulnerability is a 8% increase to damage received, so we just multiply it by 0.08. So this entire factor would give us about 0.02 or so, 0.027 I think was what it ended up being. We add 1 to it, so it becomes a percentage, so now it's 1.027, and we multiply that by the lower parse that we want to compare to. And so that ends up giving us 37,267 as our theoretical ceiling DPS. So this isn't like actual what you would actually pull if you had 57% minor vulnerability uptime. This is just kind of a metric that I use to kind of compare in a most optimal situation. Like everything went exactly perfectly. This is what you would expect your ceiling to be. So we can see here that the Asylum staff, it was nice having you for 2 patches, but now it does seem like it's gonna lose out to 552 with an acuity front bar. So that kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. I suppose that's the way the meta changes. That's the way the meta goes. Alright, so what about acuity over Julianos? We can try that, but the results will probably be pretty similar to each other, because, well, it's basically the only thing you're varying between these 2 parses is your spammable. So it's Force Pulse with the Asylum Perfected Staff versus having the acuity with the Elemental Weapon, but it is something that I can try. I think I have to create, yeah, I have to craft some acuity, but I can try out acuity on the 5-piece. So magsorc's using acuity and Moondancer. I want to try it. I haven't been able to try it just because I haven't been able to run something like that for a while. That is something I do intend on testing out at some point. Moondancer with acuity on a magsorc. Again, the problem is synergies, right? Chances are you're not necessarily going to be in melee range, so you won't be able to hit those conduit synergies from your other magsorc friends. If you're playing at range, the only synergies you'll be able to get are going to be orbs. And while Moondancer does have a 30-second duration, you do have like that 10-second buffer room. You're still going to have to chase down those orbs, and you're going to have to be relying on your healer. Oh shoot, I'm on the Julianos crafting station instead of acuity. Oh well, whatever. I have another set of Julianos now, not a big deal. But yeah, that's the main, I want to say, hesitation of using Moondancer on a ranged DPS class like we have with magsorcs. I'm not 100% sure if that is something that I necessarily want to be reliant on, like being able to hit those synergies. It's also like, if you think about it from a like DPS perspective, like just from figuring out like solo self-buffed, if you have someone throwing orbs at you, then you're getting additional sustain. So you kind of want to control for that as well in your testing. So I'm not sure if people would be willing to put up with all that. And so in an ideal scenario, if I'm testing Moondancer, I'd want to do something like have a magsorc throw conduit at me, so that way I'm not getting additional sustain from like orbs or shards or something like that. That's just for my peace of mind and kind of controlling things. I appreciate coming over and throwing synergies, but don't feel like you need to. I'm probably not gonna. I do want to get to like other classes today, so I'll probably be asking somebody, probably from Hellfire Dominion, to help me out, because there are a couple people there who are interested in how magsorcs end up doing. All this music is coming from the Nier Automata original soundtrack, so you can buy it off of Amazon, I think. So that's where I got mine. If you're working on Flawless on VMA, I would recommend not necessarily dropping Vampire, like getting rid of it. I would recommend dropping it down to Stage 2 if you still want that regen bonus. Generally speaking, Flawless on Stam is more difficult than on Mage, just because you don't have any shields. So I would say, at least I would, drop Vamp down to level 2 if I was doing Flawless on like my Stam DK or something like that. I haven't looked at one hand Axe Sword DPS combo yet for Acuity. That is something that I will test at some point, but I've kind of been busy with finals. Finally finished all of my finals. I submitted everything, so I'll be able to get to that hopefully during the next week or so. Veladreth damage. So Veli, take a look at your CPs, because Veladreth's, while proc damage is not affected by like your weapon damage or anything like that, or crit damage or anything like that, it is affected by passive boosts to physical, well, in case of Veladreth, not physical, but disease damage. So if, for example, if you have a little bit more into disease damage, like Mighty on your Stam Night Blade for your CPs compared to Stam DK, that'll be why Veladreth is hitting a little bit harder there. So that's something that you're going to want to keep in mind of. That's generally where the small discrepancies come into play, with the differences in CPs, as well as usually there's a little bit of difference in class passives as well. So like, for example, Stamsorcs, Selines, and Stormfist will hit a little bit harder because they have passive increase to physical damage. So let's try out, so this is Acuity with Perfected Inferno Staff, so we're having the Acuity 5-piece here with Willpower and the Perfected Asylum. Still using Lambrus because we're still assuming we're going to be playing at range. Then we'll do the exact same thing with LE Weapon. Good luck with VMA Nova. I wish you the best of luck. Yes, I do like the Accelerate skill. It's pretty useful as a very consistent source of minor force. The only thing I don't like about it is the channel time. So you could go with like the other morph, which doesn't have a channel, but then you're also using a lot more magicka. So that's why I'm still sticking with the one with the channel. Now, on certain classes, I'm actually not going to be using the accelerate skill, like for example, any magicka class that plays at melee range. So that'll be like your Mag Templar, oh no, out of magicka. That'll be like your Magplar, your Nightblades, for instance. I won't be recommending accelerate there because you can just use rearming trap. And rearming trap is going to be better compared to accelerate for those classes, mainly because you're able to use your secondary resource, stamina, so you're able to conserve your magicka for DPSing. So yeah, that was a little bit worse, 36.3. I think I messed up. I lost a heavy attack at the beginning, so that might be why my sustain was a little bit worse here. Plus, QED does have different, oops, not the right button. Does have different set bonuses, so you have weapon damage, spell damage, max stam, max magicka, compared to Juliana's, which has spell crit, max magicka, spell crit, spell damage. Or ignore the 5-piece. But so that might explain a little bit of the difference there. The 2 additional spell crits, you lose the 2 spell crits, you gain the spell damage, and you have a basically wasted set effect of weapon damage. So that might be explain a little bit of that disparity there when it comes to this parse here. But it still does seem like that 552 is still going to be better. There's no real way to test a QED body because on a 552 setup, because you will want a QED on your front bar on a 552 setup so you can control when the proc happens. You don't want the proc to be happening randomly necessarily. You kind of want to know when your proc is going to happen. So it doesn't seem like Asylum's going to make it past the Summerset Isles patch. So for those of you guys who worked really hard to get your Asylum Perfected staff, it does seem like it's going to be a bank sitter for the next patch at least, unless they change something here, but I don't think they will. Alright, so that's all non-pet builds. So let's now move ahead to the pet builds. So non-pet builds and pet builds are going to be a little bit different when it comes to bar setups, because Aegis doesn't have to be double slotted anymore, double barred anymore, but your pets still do. So you will have to double slot our pets here, so you can't necessarily do what I have here and have acceleration down here. You need to have your pet there. So that basically eliminates the possibility of using accelerate, which means if you want that minor force, you're going to need to have somebody guard you, or you're going to need to give up something on your front bar. For example, you might need to give up inner light for minor force, which I don't think is going to be worth it because you're losing 7% additional max magicka. So to me, not really worth that trade-off there. So let's go back to our 5-5-2 setup here. We'll have to swap out my ultimates. So I have to swap out my ultimates here because if I don't have this here, I don't have any Destro Staff abilities here, so I'm losing out on the Ancient Knowledge passive. And I need to actually swap out my gear as well. So we're going back to Acuity. Final staff, and then for a body, I'm going to have to actually pick it up from here. It's an overland set, light. I'm using Necropotence. The tried and true magsorc gear. Upgrade this up to gold. Yeah, I hate saying this, but Sorcs, it feels like we're getting relegated more and more to being a buff/debuff bitch. Like a lot of Trials guilds run 6 stam, 1 Magnite Blade for the DPS, and 1 sorc. And that sorc is really only there for the additional minor vulnerability uptime from liquid lightning and shock damage, as well as a source of major berserk from your storm Atronex. So I feel like magsorcs, at least, they're not in a very good spot right now, which is very unfortunate. And yeah, it's just the sustain. Sorc sustain is absolute poop. It's garbage. Magnite Blades, they have leeching. Mag decays with combustion, they have now basically like an extra 150 to 100 additional regen. Magplars even have a little bit better sustain because they have channeled focus, and Wardens have Blue Betty. Sorcs, we don't really have anything that gives us additional sustain. Let's go ahead and try this out. So we are going with 5 Necro, 5 Acuity, still going with Lambris because we are still assuming that we are playing ranged. Now, one thing that you could do is you can actually swap out that health glyph for a magicka glyph if you'd like. So, for example, we can do something like this because we do get additional health from having our pet out. So we can try that. So with our pet out, we're sitting a little bit shy of 16.3. So that's kind of up to you whether or not you want to do that or not. So let's go ahead and do this. That is, I forgot about sorc negates. And the thing is though, you could like, realistically, you could ask like a stam sorc to do the negate. Assuming stam sorcs actually manage to be used in trials. I'm not sure if magsorcs, or not magsorcs, stam sorcs. Actually don't know if stam sorcs are going to be able to survive. Just judging from the fact that, at least from my mag decay tests, mag decays self-buffed were pulling higher than my stam sorc. Not by much, but enough that mag decay is technically better. Oh, the sustain. Absolute garbage sustain. Oops. Alright, let's take a look here. 39.5, so pet sorcs are still doing better than non-pet sorcs. That's kind of to be expected. Minor vulnerability uptime was quite good. Surprisingly, very, very good here. Probably coming maybe from our pet pulse. That would be my guess, is where it's coming from, because I'm not using concussion. 42 hits of concussion, but doesn't tell me where those concussion came from. I mean, it could be coming from elemental weapon because elemental weapon does apply vulnerability. So that's your pet sorc with necropotence, 39.5k. So pretty good. So let's try out Sororia instead of necropotence. See how Sororia does compared to necro. Oh nope, that's Reliquant. Sororia. Gonna have to unsummon that. So now we'll see how Sororia holds up against necropotence. So remember that pet damage scales really badly with spell damage. It scales much better with max magicka instead. So we will see whether the spell damage boost to our other abilities outweighs the boost from necropotence to our pet damage. Yeah, every weapon does proc it, but I don't know. It's random, and at least when LZH tried it out, it seemed like he was getting maim more than minor vulnerability. So, not sure, but that's probably where it's coming from. This is going to be a best case scenario where we're standing in the proc itself. Right now, Sororia is not providing. Oh, nobody saw that. I missed the proc time. Yeah, so Sororia right now is not providing Minor Slayer right now. I think it's a bug. I think they just forgot to update Sororia. Because I think it should be providing Minor Slayer, if I remember correctly. Also, all the perfected sets, the new trial sets, are also bugged. So, like perfected Arms of Reliquant, for example, the stacks, it's not stacking properly. So that's something to keep in mind if you are testing on the PTS. That the perfected versions of all of these sets are bugged at the moment. Bow builds. I haven't tried any bow builds. I've been meaning to, but those of you guys who are on Reddit, you guys saw probably saw my two-handed post. That was what I was working on primarily between working on my finals. But if the two-handed builds were any indication, I think bow builds are going to be in a pretty good spot in this coming patch. They're still going to be inferior to dual-wield bow. Okay, so I had a little bit of lag there, so it was only about 38.9, so about 39k. So within stone's throw of Necro, if I didn't have that weird lag spike there, it'd probably be a lot closer. Again, 88% Sororia. Let's take a look at the pet damage though. So pet pulse drops significantly, 1951 compared to 2401. So we lost about 500 DPS, or about 20% of our DPS from familiar pulse by using Sororia. Just quickly taking a look at some of our top hitting stuff. So 7907, compare that with 7540. 4957, compare that with 4806, 3927, 4,000. So everything seems to be hitting a little bit harder. Let's see, Haunted Curse is 2638. Haunted Curse 2913. So things they're pretty close to each other. So it seems like you can use either Sororia or Necro on a pet build. Yeah. So right now you'll get better DPS on the PTS with non-perfected Sororia, but assuming they fixed all these bugs by the time it goes live or next week, perfected is obviously going to be giving you better DPS overall, and that's because the perfected versions will be giving you additional resources as well. So if you take a look here at, so let me see here. So Mantle of Sororia right now is spell damage, spell crit, max magicka, and then the 5-piece bonus. The 3-piece should be Minor Slayer, but it's not on live right now. We'll take a look at the Perfected Mantle. Oh, it's not even showing up on Perfected Mantle. So Mantle of Sororia is completely screwed over then. Forget that. Let's do Arms Reliquant instead. So Arms Reliquant is crit, Minor Slayer, crit, and then the 5-piece. Then if you take a look at the Perfected Arms of Reliquant, it's crit, Minor Slayer, crit, and then the 5-piece gives you max stamina and the 5-piece effect itself. So Perfected will give you better DPS overall once they fix the way the stacks work. So Sororia and Reliquant right now, the stacks aren't working correctly, so that's why it's currently bugged right now. Right, so that's for pet. So I mean, just based on this, it doesn't look like pets are really gonna pet builds are gonna change too much. It seems like you're still gonna be using Necropotence. You're gonna be using Acuity, so it's Necro, Acuity, Lambrus. If you don't want to use Lambrus, you can probably go with Scoria instead. So that's pretty much kind of what I mean. Pet Sorc is pretty easy to test overall because there's Sorcs in general is pretty easy to test overall. But Pet Sorc's even more so because it's basically like you have Necropotence, you have Moondancer, and then you have this new trial set, and you know it just seems like Necropotence is gonna win out compared to Sororia, especially when you consider in a trial you'll be moving around a lot with Sororia, so you won't necessarily be able to get a full stack like you do here on a dummy where you're basically just standing, you know, in one spot the whole time. So that is that for Pet Sorc. Non-Pet Sorc looks like if you are in Sack and Burn, it's still going to be Sororia Acuity, but otherwise it looks like Julia Acuity is going to be pretty good. I'm actually going to test out... Oh wait, no, do I have... No, I didn't. I'm actually going to test out Netch and Acuity on a non-pet build using double Lightning Staff. Jerk it. I'm interested in seeing how that actually plays out. So then we're going to be doing off the crate a lightning Acuity staff. A lot of infused lightning maelstrom. And then we'll compare this to Julianos. Let's see. Oh, that's ice. I don't want ice. So we'll see how Netch compares here with double lightning. Now the question is, of course, if you're going double lightning, do you still want to use Lambrus, because the whole point is to maximize lightning damage, and chances are you really shouldn't unless you want to use a flame enchant. So this is pretty much going like I'm going pure, like my job is to debuff shit and basically that's it. So we'll see how this goes out. This plays out. That's everything. Yep, that's everything. Let's see, I need enchanting table. Oh, no. No! Verdict Spellweave and Acuity on non-pet Sorc. That's something that I can try out too. I'm trying to remember what shock it was. Maybe. In that scenario, you definitely would be using a double Inferno, because otherwise there's no point in running Burning Spellweave. So that's something that I can try out too. Some natural. I'll have to pull out a health enchant. Lambris piece, just so it's accurate to what we'd be using in raids. There we go. So it's going to be Acuity with Netch. Pretty much everything is shock. All shock damage. Elite weapon will proc Lambris fire if it applies burning. So we'll have to see how many fire Lambris proc I manage to get. Yeah, I'll do Spellweave Acuity too with double Inferno. Let's see how that compares to our Julie Parse. Let me see if I still have the Julie Parse. I should still have it saved up here. Is this the Julie Parse? Yeah, this is the Julie Parse, so we'll save this one before it gets lost. Oh, I already have my ultimate. Okay. I knew that. So yeah, so we'll do Netch Acuity, Lambris, and then we'll do Burning Spellweave Acuity, Lambris, and compare that to Julie Acuity, Lambris. And these are not necessarily one-to-one comparisons. We're searching for the best in slot, so we're not doing any sort of one-to-one comparisons right now, unless you count DPS as a one-to-one comparison. A little bit of a lag thing there. Shouldn't affect the parse though, because it was towards the beginning. It's also important to note here that my sustain is going to be a little bit better because since we're using Lightning Wall, we're able to get off balance. And if I heavy attack during that off balance window, I get twice as much resources back. That's why my sustain here is better compared to the Inferno staff. kill in 3 seconds. There we go. Okay, so 36,490 compared to what we had earlier, which was, here it is, 36,479. So pretty close together. You can say pretty much within margin of error. The added bonus too is also on a solo parse. We get off balance uptime, which means I get better resource return when I heavy attack during that that off balance window there. Minor vulnerability uptime is also going to be a lot higher, so that's something else I need to keep in mind as well. So for example here, our minor vulnerability uptime was 30. And then here it was 58, so this is pretty similar to what we had earlier. So our Julie parse would be a little bit higher. It'd be 37,267 or whatever it was that we calculated earlier. So it does seem like Netch, if you're doing double lightning, perfectly doable. It seems to be doing very, very well. It has the advantage of having more vulnerability uptime. You're able to contribute to off-balance uptime. It's, generally speaking, it's probably going to be a good option to use as a magsorc if you have lightning staves available to you. So now what did I say? Burning Spellweave and Acuity is next. So we'll do that. I think I do need to pull it out of the dungeon set, so... Spellweave. Now the problem with Spellweave too is now you have to decide which set do you want to wear on your front bar, because they're both technically proc sets. However, generally speaking, you will be having the Acuity on your front bar and not Burning Spellweave, because this is the more potent proc. The mechanical Acuity proc is the stronger proc to have. And again. Gold everything out. Right. This is again on a non-pet build. Obviously, Burning Spellweave would not impact our Pet Pulse ability at all. And our Pet Pulse wouldn't even proc Burning Spellweave, so there's no point in running Burning Spellweave on a pet build. Okie dokie. Here we go. Remember, because we're not having that off-balance additional bonus on our heavy attack, our sustain is going to be worse compared to our previous parse where we did have that off-balance resource boost. This sustain. Lost heavy attack here. Alright, so that was Spellweave Acuity on a double Inferno Sorc, and does seem like it did do a lot better, with similar amount of vulnerability uptime, which is the important thing, when we compare that to our other parts here, which was with Julie Mechanical Acuity. So 31, 30%, you can pretty much say it's a wash between the two of them. So it does seem like Burning Spellweave is doing better than Julie is as the 5-piece that's consistently upped. So one thing I'm interested in seeing actually is what was the uptime on Burning Spellweave? 55%. So something happened here, because the cutoff percentage point for Burning Spellweave to beat out Julianos would be about 58% or so. So I think what's happening here is, if we take a look at Burning Spellweave versus Julianos, their set bonuses, Burning Spellweave basically has one of each. So magicka, spell damage, spell crit. And then Julianos here has spell crit, max magicka, spell crit. So we're losing one piece of spell crit for additional spell damage. The other thing that I think is also happening is when Burning Spellweave procs and coincides with the Acuity proc, you're getting a lot stronger result, because the Burning Spellweave proc is a lot stronger. You get more spell damage out of it, 525 compared to 299. So you're basically trading off higher burst damage with Burning Spellweave Acuity compared to something like Julianos Acuity, where it's going to be a little bit more consistent overall. So it does seem like for non-pet, Spellweave Acuity is going to be best if you're going with double Inferno with a Flame Staff enchant. That's pretty important to state here, because obviously as a Sorc you have kind of a little bit of flexibility here. Could go with double Lightning Staff, in which case Net would obviously win out over Burning Spellweave, because you don't have a lot of fire damage when you're running 2 shock damage enchants, or 2 shock staves with a shock damage enchant. Well, you know, if you're going with something like an Inferno front and Lightning back, Julianos is probably going to be better than Burning Spellweave, just because you have a Lightning Lightning Maelstrom Staff instead of an Inferno Maelstrom Staff, so you're not getting that blockade of fire up. So it does seem like, at least for magsorc, Spellweave and Acuity is going to be a very strong combination to use in fights where you're not necessarily going to be able to use Sororia at all. Now, choice of Monster Helm here, something that I forgot to take a look at for our Netch parse. So this was the Netch parse, and so Lambris here, Fire Lambris didn't actually do that much damage, so actually I would probably swap out Lambris with Scoria on a double lightning, just because combined it seems to be making up just over 1.1k, and I think Scoria does a little bit more than that on average on a magsorc, because you have 2 dots running at all the time. So that's something that I would also probably change with this double shock build here. I'd probably use Scoria instead. But yeah, it does seem like Spellweave and Acuity is going to be best for double Inferno magsorcs. Julianos is still going to be best if you haven't had time to farm Burning Spellweave. But if you have it available to you, definitely use Burning Spellweave instead of Acuity, and just be mindful of when your Acuity is proccing. It's going to be difficult to get that optimal burst where you have the Spellweave proc along with the Acuity proc happening at the same time, but if you're able to do it, it's going to give you a lot more DPS compared to doing something like Julianos and Acuity, I think. Alright, so that is magsorc. So we spent about an hour and a half on magsorc. So non-pet, basically we kind of have two options here. There's going to be, if you're doing like double lightning, then go with Netch and Acuity. If you're going with double Inferno, go Burning Spellweave and Acuity. If you're kind of want to bridge the gap here and do Inferno front, lightning back, then probably Julianos is going to be best. Monster Helm set, if you're playing ranged, stick with the Lambris. Scoria is also not a bad choice either. And then if you're able to play melee, then obviously go with Zon, because that's going to be a lot stronger. Alright, so let's now go ahead and log out. Narayanith, I'd say it's pretty much gonna be dead. If Sorks swap over to Ellie weapon, you're losing 2 additional direct damage hits, so Narayanus probably isn't really gonna be that great. So the question now is, do I go back to Magicka Nightblade? Because I pretty much have played Magicka Nightblade to death. I think I pretty much have figured out what I need to do there. Stamina Nightblade, I haven't done a lot of stamina stuff recently. I could go back to Magicka Warden, but I feel like it's pretty much going to be a QD and Architect with the bear. Actually, you know what I can do? I'm going to... Actually, I don't need to... Actually, no. Yes, I do actually want to race change. We'll do Stam DK next, because that's something that a lot of people have wanted to be doing. So the question now is, do I just stick with Dark Elf, because that's what my Stam DK is on live, or do I swap to Red Guard? I'll stick to Dark Elf. Just because that's what I have on live, so might as well make the test as applicable as possible to my live account, because I don't want to race change my tune to Red Guard. So, Stam DKs. It's going to be interesting to see whether they maintain a heavy attack rotation or swap over to a light attack rotation instead, using an crushing weapon instead. Ooh, Shadowrend set. I actually want to see what the Shadowrend set looks like before I move ahead. Oh, and of course the can't say I'm particularly impressed with Shadowrend. Okay, so let's see. I do need to actually do some respecs here. Need to get rid of all that. Need to redo all of my skills as well. Do we have inventory space? Yes, I do. So I'm going to be doing a heavy attack build first, and then we'll respec into a light attack build instead. I think with a light attack build we're going to have to use Dubious, so I'm probably going to have to redistribute my attributes for that. Flames. Dynamite. Just pick these up just because, in case I ever decide to do something like used hardened armor on the Stam DK for whatever reason. We want multiple armaments. The weapon, dual wield, deadly, rending, all of our passives. I can do Stam Blade. I did it earlier, I think, this week. I think the Monday stream was, or not Monday stream. The Tuesday stream maybe was a Stam Blade. I definitely tested Stam Blade at some point after the most recent patch. So it's probably somewhere in the stream's archive playlist. But Stam Nightblades, holy poop, they're super strong. They're still probably going to be the strongest Stam spec right now. I think I pulled 50k with Reliquin on Stam Nightblade. Deadly Cloak, yes, was nerfed. That being said, we didn't really use Deadly Cloak for the damage, we used Deadly Cloak for the damage mitigation. So really the damage difference from the nerf is going to be pretty minimal at best, so that's why we're not even bothering. We're still using Deadly Cloak, because remember that Deadly Cloak does give you that 25% additional mitigation from area of effects, so it's really, really strong. That's what we wanted there. Let me see, under Alliance, Razor. I think I have all my, nope, don't have all my racials. Crafting stuff again. Oh, This beats go like porting to Deshawn and doing remorphing, all that stuff. I can do it all in here. So I think I'm just gonna be using the Reliquin and Acuity. That is by far the strongest combination right now. They are gonna nerf Reliquin, but even if they give it like a 30% nerf, it's still probably gonna outperform VO. Okay, so now let's do. Let's see here. I need a bow. I guess we need to do. We're gonna be going with. Let's stick with Veldreth for now. Can try out Celine's in a little bit. Deadly Pauldron Mask. Then I need a VMA bow. Nern still. This is our back bar. Front bar, we need to make my acuity weapons. Acuity here. Still gonna go with axe sword. Do infused axe. And nerd sword. I'm gonna upgrade these. Yeah, I wish they would give us dummies that like you can like interact with and be like, I want these debuffs on the dummy to just to make it easier to do like raid buff parses, which I think are more informative than solo parses. But a quick way to kind of ballpark what you would hit with puncture on like a Stamsorc or a Stamplar, because they don't have native sources of major fracture, would be to basically, where's my sword? Fuck, where's my sword? Basically, you can think of it as major fracture adds about 8 to 10% additional DPS. So you can just add, just like multiply what you got by like 1.08, and that'll give you like minimum what you'd be able to hit with major fracture. Multiply it by 1.1, and then you get what you would maximally hit if you had major fracture. It's not perfect, but it is something that you can do to kind of give yourself a ballpark figure as to what you're able to hit. Okay, so we're gonna go with this one was stem. Yes, this is stem. We're gonna make stam food, blue food, and then we're also gonna make not Sigic. Oh, I have to learn that. Okay. Ultimate crafting holiday book. We need to learn our dubious. And we'll have dubious here for when we do our light attack build. And then we will be doing trial set medium. Do Sororia body. So not Sororia, Reliquin body. So much like with VO and War Machine, if you're using War Machine on like a Stamplar or a Stam Nightblade, you're gonna want Reliquin to be on your body at all times. So that way you don't drop it at all. Then you have Acuity on your front bar there, so you can control the proc. Reliquin's going to be way down here. Yeah. I would like them to introduce a way to like give yourself a raid parse or something like that. Like have a dummy be interactable. So be like, I want major minor fracture on the dummy, and I want minor vulnerability on the dummy, or whatever, or you know, like have like a buff tracker or something that'd be like, hey, I want to pretend I have like spell power cure or something like that. I need to make weapon power pots. I think I have to change the enchants too on my jewelry pieces and stuff like that. Alright, so stand BK. Once we get everything set up, we will be able to get started. So we're going to be starting off with the heavy attack build, so pretty much what you're going to be doing on live right now. Then we will do a light attack build now, using crushing weapon instead. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit that in though. I'm just thinking, what would I replace? I can't really it's hard to tell because you want venomous claws, obviously, you want rending slashes, you want deadly cloak, you have your arming trap. So it's kind of like, what do you give up? So that's going to be the hard part when it comes to doing a light attack rotation. But I just based on the fact that we have so many skills that we can't give up on the front bar, I don't think we will be seeing. I don't think we'll be necessarily be seeing crushing weapon being used on the stand BK. Tanking dummies. I wish there was a better way to test tanks. Besides, like, go to a dungeon or something like that. I wish there was a way to test tanks in a controlled environment. But I guess the whole purpose of testing a tank is to see how they perform in an uncontrolled environment, so there's also that argument there. I need to change my enchants. Flames of Oblivion, yeah, that's probably the only thing that I would say I'd get rid of. So I'd basically like shift trap to my back bar instead. At least that's the way that I have my bar set up, at least. I'll change all of these to bloodthirsty. I need poison and weapon damage and chance. Yeah, I'll have to play around. I might have to backbar Noxious. It's gonna be a bit of a rotation change because I normally have Noxious on my front. Where am I? Oh, here they are. I'll change these to Bloodthirsty, and I do believe I'm going to need some transmute crystals. 4. Bloodthirsty right now. There we go. Now we will start off with your typical, your standard heavy attack build. So this is my Stam Decay setup. This isn't going to be every Stam Decay setup. Some Stam Decays do backbar Noxious and have Flames of Oblivion on the front bar. I don't do that, but like I said, you can set up yours however you'd like. This is just going to be more of a comparison for me compared to what I have on live right now. Right. Don't need to change anything here. I feel like I have too much health for some reason. Oh, Pauldron. that's what I'm running on live right now. Can you use? Okay. So those tanking dummies, those. It's one thing to test a tank for survivability, which is nice to do, but when I test tanks out for vet trials teams, I tend to look more at their debuff up times and their buff up times. So for me, it's how well can they maintain their Crusher enchant and how well can they maintain something like Heroic Slash. So those are the two kind of buffs, debuffs that I look at. Of course, Warhorn as well, whether they're using Warhorn, things like that. Being able to survive, that is also important, so it's something I also keep track of, and having a dummy like that would be helpful to have, but you're still going to need to be able to like figure out what your debuff and buff uptimes are in an actual fight, not on a static thing like a dummy. You will have to use Imbue Weapon and then a light attack, so you can't do light attack, Imbue Weapon, then it doesn't work. You have to do Imbue Weapon, then light attack. Let's go ahead and do this parse here. Let me just make sure I have everything. Oh, I have to do my CP as well. I am on a mag CP here. Oops. I think I just cleared everything. I don't want to clear everything. I have to change my Mundus as well. I think I needed 16. Yeah, I needed 16 here. So the new Stam meta, it seems like, again, this still requires a couple more testing, but it does seem like Lover with 16 points into piercing is going to be what a lot of people are going to be doing. I'll put the rest into Master at Arms. Let's actually drop this down to 56. Let's do something like that just for funsies. Actually, let's go ahead and get started here. Alright, so this is a heavy attack build, so we're still using Molten Armaments. Heavy attacking on our front bar, we've been doing 3 on our front bar here. Probably 4 because we did lose Robust, so we'll see. So Mace, for those of you guys who aren't aware about how Mace penetration works, so Maces have add 10% penetration for each mace that you have equipped. So with 2 maces, your dual wielding maces, with a 20% reduction in the basically you gain 20% physical penetration based on the amount of resistances that the thing you're hitting has. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that maces, that 20% is calculated after debuffs. So after Major Fracture, after Alkosh, after Minor Fracture, after, at least on live right now, Sunder Flame and Night Mother's Gaze. So it's, while you might think it should be about, what is it, 1,820, it's actually going to be much less than that because you have to consider that you're always going to have Major Fracture up, or you should always have Major Fracture up, I should say. So maces, generally speaking, do not make it into the PvE scene, just because the penetration that you're getting is probably going to end up being closer to like 800 or something like that, instead of like whatever it is. Oh shoot, I didn't change my Mundus. Oh, it's too late now. I'm just gonna finish the parse. Oh no, I even lagged at the end of this parse here. So I did forget to change my Mundus, I think. Yeah, I'm still running the Apprentice Soups. But that was still a 39.5k parse, partly because Reliquin is just so goddamn powerful. So we'll change Mundus and do that again. That was not an accurate parse at all. You don't run Apprentice on a Stam DPS. I even said I would change Mundus too. So just for reference for you guys, the number to beat here in terms of a stamina Nightblade parse is going to be 50.5. This is with Arms of Reliquin and Acuity. So that is the number to beat, 50.5. Let's see if we were able to do that or not. So we're still going to be doing a heavy attack build first, and then we'll swap over to a light attack build. So what I'm thinking about doing, I took a little bit of time to kind of think about it. I think I might drop Molten Armaments actually, because the reason why we run Molten Armaments is for the 40% additional damage to heavy attacks. So if we're not doing a heavy attack build, there's no reason to run Molten anymore. So I think that's what I'm going to end up doing when we do a light attack build. So what I'll do is I'll just move Rearming Trap to the back bar, get rid of Molten Armaments, and then have Crushing Weapon over here and just do a light attack rotation that way. And we'll see how that plays out. But first, let's redo the heavy attack build parse. VMA one-handed weapons on the PTS. I haven't tried them out. I actually don't think anybody has seriously tried them since they were buffed. I think in Clockwork City where they were buffed. And with the changes that have been happening with Summerset, there's even less reason now to use VMA. Acuity is just too strong. You don't want to give up your Monster Helm because that's also pretty strong as well. And then Flurry is honestly not that great of a move when compared to like Crushing Weapons or something like that. So I don't think VMA weapons are going to be very, they're not going to be best in slot. You can probably make them work. The main thing with VMA one-handed was that Poison Injection was consuming the proc with every single tick, but they fixed that, so it might be worth revisiting. But you will have to basically change up your rotation a fair amount in order to take advantage of the VMA Flurry proc. Get rid of that trap there. Okay, so with the proper Mundus now we're hitting 45.3. This is with Reliquin and Acuity. So we do have to keep in mind that Nightblades do get Minor Berserk. They also get, and I think that's pretty much it that they get, because both of us have Major Fracture. So again, they do have that Minor Berserk uptime there, so that's something to keep in mind when you compare these two parses. But 45.3, that's pretty good. So this is going to be our baseline to beat now using a light attack build. So for a light attack build, I'm using Khorne Throne. We will drop our stam, max stam. It also drops our health, so we will have to respec our attributes. I'll probably just do what I was doing on my stam Nightblade, which is health enchant here. Then I need to get an attribute respec scroll. Then do, what did I put in here? I think I put 8. No, I put 10 in here. And the rest into stam here. So we lose a lot of stam if we're doing this light attack rotation here. So let's see what we're able to do. So I am going to swap out Molten Armaments. We're not going to need that anymore. It's going to be put here. And then we're going to try out Crushing Weapon. Oh wait, no, wrong mark. Crushing Weapon here. Now that does mean we actually end up losing 3% weapon damage. So actually, let's do this. We're gonna move Noxious to our back bar. That way we can keep our that way we can keep the weapon damage on our front bar here. Oh yeah, if I was a red guard, I'd be doing a lot more damage. Well, not a lot more. I think it's like something like 2 or 3% additional damage, which ends up being like maybe like 46, 47k or something. Sustain would also be a lot better. But I also really like my Dark Elves, so I don't want to swap. I don't want to race change, basically, is kind of the point. Alright, so let's see if a Stam DK could maintain a light attack rotation or not. It's gonna be interesting to see. Sorcs, Stam Sorcs have Dark Deal. Nightblades have Siphoning, the dish for sustain. DKs, while we did get a boost to our sustain from combustion, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if this works out or not. Just right off the bat, it doesn't seem like a Stam DK is able to maintain a light attack rotation. It seems like I'm still gonna have to heavy attack. So let's reset this, and I'm gonna think up of something I can do here real quick. It doesn't seem like I'm able to sustain a full light attack rotation. Oh, you're right. I didn't change my green TPs. I have to change my green TPs around. So I have Mooncalf instead of Arcanist. Try this again. Once we get our full Stam back, I'll just try it again and see if I can maintain a light attack rotation. So that gives us 1149 Stam regen. This is with 3 weapon damage and all this stuff. Might have to swap to Stormfist for the additional Stam regen. Kinda don't want to do that though. The Stormfist is not as strong as on a Stam DK. Let's see what we can do with Veladreths. See how well that plays out, and then swap to Stormfist if we need it. Yeah, so it's still okay. So yeah, let's try swapping to Stormfist. Let's see how that handles it. Actually, let me try doing. Well, let's get it back up to max stamina again, and then I will try. I'm gonna try one heavy attack on the front bar. See how that deals. How that works. He's still gonna be in Veladress. It's a little bit better if I can weave in that extra heavy attack. It's like a heavy attack here. And it does seem like I do have time to do 2 heavy attacks potentially. So let's try that. Let's do 2 heavies again once we get our stam all the way back up. Because it does seem like we have enough time to do 2 heavies. And that'll cause Endless Hail to drop off on our front bar, which is kind of actually what we would like. And that seems to be a little bit better. It's hard to tell. We will swap to Stormfist and try a parse using a 2 front heavy attack rotation. But if we're doing heavy attacks, then I'm gonna be wondering whether we want to put in molten armaments again. Because in that case, we'd basically be doing molten armaments here. Something like this. This is what our bars would probably look like. Let's try that. We do lose a bit of weapon damage because we don't have Veli, but we do gain some stamina regen here if we're going to be doing with a more light attack, heavy rotation. I screwed up that timing there. can already tell this is worse. Question is by how much. It's actually not that much worse, but it is definitely worse. So 43k compared to 45.3, so we lost 2k there by using Crushing Weapon. It's not even that great. And that was because we dropped Flames of Oblivion. Where's Flames of Oblivion? Flames of Oblivion, which is over here, much higher. Yeah. So I have a feeling Stam DKs are probably going to be sticking to a heavy attack rotation. And I think a big part of it too is that a Stam DK, they don't really have a spammable per se. They never really had a spammable to begin with. All their abilities are pretty much dots. So Caltrops, Claw, Injection, Rending, Blade Cloak, Noxious, they're all dots. So I'm not sure how that will work out. I do want to try to get a light attack rotation going. Light attack rotation with flames instead of imbue? Yeah, I can try that. I need to get my ultimate back up. Oh, yeah. It doesn't seem like DKs are going to be going with the light attack build. Because you're still doing 2 heavy attacks, which at that point you might as well be using Molten Armaments. And if you're using Molten Armaments, you might as well use 3 heavy attacks instead of 2. It's starting to get dark. Let me turn on the light. There we go. We'll see. Keep flames on the front bar. Why not? I think there's also, I can probably find a better way to optimize this rotation. Oh, this song? I think this song is listed like 3 times in the thing, so... which might be why it plays so often. Yeah, it just swapped a different version when I hit next. So, for those of you guys who haven't played Nier before, that's because that song, Weight of the World, actually has 3 different versions. They composed 3 different versions of the song. Or I guess technically 4. But it's usually just 3. So they have one version in French. They have one version in English. They have one version in Japanese. And then they have one version in the in-game language, which is what the singers describe. They call it chaos language, but it's just kind of like the language that they use in-game. So like the creator of the game, when he first created this language, is kind of like, I want to create a language that is what I envision, what do you say, like French and Japanese would sound 3,000 years into the future, because this is set like much farther in the future. So it's an interesting song. It's a pretty interesting concept. Okay, so that time was a little bit better, 43.8, but still not great. At least compared to a full heavy attack build running blue food, which was 45.3. So it doesn't seem like stam DKs at least are going to be doing a light attack rotation. It's pretty much going to be pure heavy attack rotation. The only thing that's changing for stam DKs, I guess, is you're running the Lover and you're running Arms of Eloquent instead. So that's kind of a bummer. That's kind of a letdown there. And I do think it's mainly because all of our abilities here, all of our class abilities are dots. So I think that's the problem with stam DKs trying to use a spammable. We just don't have a good class spammable to use because we have so many dots that we have to put down. Which kind of sucks. It really sucks. But yeah, so stam DKs, I'm going to save that parse because I will save it. This is a stam DK parse, 45.3, and now we're going to... I'm going to hop over to stam Nightblade. Not stam Nightblade, actually. Let's swap over to Stamplar. Let's do Stamplar, yeah. I think I'll have to make a Templar. So I'll have to delete a tune here. Make a Templar. Let's do Stamplar just because I haven't done Stamplar yet, I don't think. Templar. Get rid of all of these adornments and stuff like that. Okay, there we go. So this will probably be the last test because I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. It is 7:45 right now, so it's about my dinner time. So we'll do Stamplar, see where Stamplars stand in relation to Stam DKs and Stam Nightblades. Let me see if I have a Stam... I might have a Stam Sorc parse saved, actually. I was testing Stam Sorcs earlier, the two-hand versus dual wield, so I should have a couple of Stam Sorc parses saved. Oh, poop.
Well met and good fortune to you.
Why can't I get out? Oh, that's right, because the crown store is bugged. I wonder how many people have reported that. Okay. I also don't think Countermetrics is on even. Then settings. Change all of these back. Nameplate's on. I like the nameplate so I know what's going on. Zero, I have to change ultimate thing. And Wicked's gotta change it so it's on the top of the screen and take out some of the stuff there. I'm in wherever they spawn you for Summerset now. Yeah, I'm gonna port over to my house. Okay, it's Stamplar time, so get rid of this first. Let's expand our inventory first. There we go. Inventory is expanded. We will be using Dubious, so that's gonna be, what do I have? 10 health. Rest into Stam. so. Get rid of the skill advisor. So the two things we're going to be, there's a couple things I want to test. First is I want to test War Machine and Acuity, and then compare that to Reliquant and Acuity. That'll be interesting to see, I think, how that all plays out. And then, just to tease you guys a little bit, one of my friends in Mayflower mains a Magplar, or his main is a Magplar, and he actually managed to do a Dark Flare build. So I'm wondering, I kind of want to see. I've been meaning to ask him what his Dark Flare build looks like. So I kind of want to see if I'm able to do something with Dark Flare. Dark Flare's, I really enjoy Dark Flare, but not every. It does have a channel, so we'll see. Let's see, dual wields. Bow. Oh yeah, somebody was doing that last night. No, not last night. In one of the raids with Mayflower, somebody was just building up the shield, and then it like kicked like half of us from the server for some reason. Fighters Guild. Let's take a look at Crushing Weapon here, because I think Stamplars might be able to do a light attack rotation with Crushing Weapon instead of jabs, so it'll be interesting to see how Crushing Weapon performs compared to jabs. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the idea behind Dark Flare. It's the empowered. So I'll go back to it once I finish allocating all of my points into shit. But yeah, so Dark Flare does give you Empower. So the idea behind it is you're able to use Empower and basically help boost your current light attack bonus. So I think it'll be interesting to test out. Obviously, one of the sets he was using was Acuity, so just kind of need to figure out what the other set he was using was. It'll be interesting to use as a ranged Magplar build instead of Force Pulse. I also need to ask him how he felt about the Sustain, because that's one of the big reasons why ranged Magplar I don't really like as much. It's the Sustain is pretty bad compared to melee Magplar. So I kind of want to ask him what the Sustain felt like when he was in a raid. The problem with Dark Flare and Ellie Weapon is you wouldn't be able to weave between them, so you'd basically have to do Dark Flare, Ellie Weapon, then your light attack. So it'd be like Dark Flare, Ellie Weapon, light attack, Dark Flare, Ellie Weapon, light attack. I'm not sure how like fluid it would be, but it is something that I also considered playing around with too once he mentioned it. But I'm probably going to test that maybe tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have time tomorrow to do stuff. So let's see, 16 into piercing, 64 mighty. This will be enough, just because jab scales off of Thaumaturge. Yeah, I remember when I used to play Magplar back in Homestead. Dark Flare builds, where it was at. Be able to pull pretty good DPS with the Dark Flare build. Then they nerfed J-Beam, and Magplars just went poop. Reliquin and War Machine together. So the problem with running Reliquin and War Machine together is you are wasting one of your set bonuses. So the set bonus here, you can see 3 pieces minor Slayer, and that's the exact same thing for War Machine. So War Machine, oh, it's not there. So War Machine here, the 3 pieces also minor Slayer. So the question is, you know, you could use Reliquin and War Machine. You could do it, but then you won't have. So there's a couple of problems with War Machine and Reliquin, combining them together. The first one is the 3-piece. You have a redundant 3-piece effect. The second thing, and this is true for both Stamplars and Stam Nightblades. If you're running War Machine and Reliquin, you're going to want to have War Machine on your front bar, so that way Reliquin is always going to be active, and that leads to some issues. So basically, you're going to no longer be able to do Flawless Dawnbreaker on your front bar. You're going to have to do Crescent Sweep on your front bar. So that ends up losing that 8% additional weapon damage from the from Dawnbreaker, the 5% from Dawnbreaker, plus the 3% from your Fighter's Guild passive. So that's one of the reasons why Reliquin and War Machine combined together, I don't think is going to be a viable. I don't want to say not a viable combo, but it's going to be a weaker combo than like War Machine Acuity or Reliquin Acuity, because that way you're not doubling up on that minor Slayer bonus, plus you're able to run Flawless Dawnbreaker on your front bar, so you have that 8% additional weapon damage while you're on your front bar there. But that's kind of what the problem is with running Reliquin and War Machine together, which is why we're not going to be doing that. For Monster Helm, we will be running Storm Fist. And that is for, since we are doing a light attack build, I do want that additional sustain from Storm Fist. Bow. Nerdy nerd. Going to appearance and hide helm, so we don't look like that. Head over to that house. Solar Barrage gives multiple empowers. That is true, because each hit of Solar Barrage gives him powers. So you might be able to do like a melee Magplar with Solar Barrage and Ellie Weapon, instead of something like Sweeps. I might try that. Like a melee Magplar with Solar Barrage, Ellie Weapon. I guess it would depend. It would depend on if you can time your Ellie Weapons to coincide with the empowers. That's something I'll have to explore tomorrow or next week. Just realized I also have to do this. Where is... oh, here's weapons as well. Buy this. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, but I kind of want to try to line up the Empower with the Ellie Weapon proc, which I think will work if you do that. But I don't know. I'd have to try it out. Not clothing, jewelry craft. Oh no, I need to get more jewelry crafting stuff. So I need to do the holiday book. Still going bloodthirsty, of course. Yeah, I'll have to try that out. Instead of using sweeps, do like Solar Barrage and Ellie Weapon. I'd have to work out exactly how Solar Barrage works, but I'm pretty sure it's every time it pulses you get the Empower boost. So it'd probably be doing something like a QED with Architect, so you can do sweeps, or not the ultimate sweeps, not the spammable sweeps from Major Slayer. I'll have to see how that compares to like your typical sweeps Templar. Weapons. Now we have to upgrade Reliquin up to gold. Still getting all of these Harvester achievements. Psijic Order Sword actually looks pretty cool. So like the Psijic Order's sword, it actually looks pretty awesome. I like it. I like the design of it. Of course, not everybody's gonna like it, but it is what it is, right? And then upgrade Reliquin stuffs. I don't know if I would use Sun Shield on a melee Magplar. Mainly because Sun Shield scales off your health, and I don't think the damage is all that useful compared to something like Vampire's Bane or Purifying Light. Okay, so we got that all set up. Need enchants. Just need to make food and stuff. So let's do Dubious. We're sitting at a good so yeah, we're sitting at a good health level there. We need to do weapon enchants. We need to make potions and poisons, then we can go ahead and start trying out Stamplar. Poison. Power. Poison. Weapon damage. That just leaves potions. And setting up our skills. So we'll try your typical Stamplar build first. Light attack rotation and everything. And then we'll try swapping out jabs with crushing weapon to see how that does compared to jabs. Then we'll play around with War Machine, compare that to Reliquin. Oh, if you're talking about going Burning Light passive, you're better off using something like Spear Shards instead, Blazing Spear. Gives people synergies for resource management, and it still procs Burning Light as well. At least that's what I use to proc Burning Light if I'm not using jabs or anything like that already. you'll see when I make my bars what I'm talking about here. Dual wield. That. I'll just the back bar. Do I want to use that? Yeah, I'll actually use this. Use ballista. Yeah, I'll use ballista instead. UI to get rid of the bar swap delay. There we go. Now I know some people like to swap out where rearming trap and repentance are. I might do that actually. Once I get my ultimate up. Enough. Now let's swap where come on. Let me swap. There we go. Swap where these are like that. Alright, so this is your typical Stamplar build. I'm just gonna be using grab the lever. Let's see how this performs right now. Stamplars compared to everyone else. Just the wrong button there. Do keep in mind that I don't play Stamplar very often. I also haven't really done this rotation in a really long time. So that is a very rusty light attack Stamplar rotation there. That was like 42.3k. Do keep in mind that we don't have major fracture, so if we multiply this this number by 1.08 or to like 1.09, 1.1, that's typically around the DPS that you would expect to get from major fracture, between 8 to 10% additional DPS. So our high would actually be something around, let me just do it real quick over here. Our high would be around 46.58, and our low would be somewhere around 45.7. So it's pretty similar to what a stamina DK would be able to pull right now. This is running a light attack rotation. I did have a little bit of issues with regen, with sustain, and that's probably more just due to the fact that I'm not very used to a light attack rotation on the Stamplar. But yeah, Veliquin still super duper strong here. So yeah, that is the Stamplar right now. So if we were to have somebody providing us with major fracture, we'd probably be sitting closer to around like 45, 46k instead of this 42.3. That's something to keep in mind. So again, our DK pulled 45.3, and are these my Stamsorcs? I think these are all my Stamsorcs. Yeah, this is my Stamsorc 40.7. Again, this is kind of a very quickly put together build here. This is with Crushing Weapon. Again, we also don't have major fracture here either. So just take that into consideration. Also, so basically it seems like Stamplars are actually in a pretty good spot. They're actually not terrible. Stamplars have kind of always been kind of on the lowest DPS when it comes to stamina DPS, pretty much like on par with like stamina Wardens, with DKs, Sorcs, and Nightblade typically pulling a little bit better. So this is nice to see that Stamplars are still pretty strong, and it's probably still going to be nice to have in groups because of that Power of the Light uptime. I wonder what I got for Power of the Light uptime. 81%. So I could actually do better with Power of the Light. Again, I don't really play Stamplar at all, not much there. So now, instead of using jabs, we're going to swap it out with Crushing Weapons instead. Now the problem with this is we still need to have the Adric Spear ability on here. I don't want to give up Flawless Dawnbreaker, so we're going to actually move Power of the Light to the back bar here, and get rid of Blazing Spear, and instead of running Ballista, we'll run Crescent on the back bar instead. So we'll try something like this, or maybe actually put Spear up here instead, actually. So this is what we're going to try out and see how this all plays out. Whether or not it's going to work, I don't know. I still have to figure out the rotation myself because this is a completely new build. So let's see what we can do. The only downside to this I can see is Power of the Light's gonna have a really shitty uptime, because if we base it off of our Endless Hail, yeah, Power of the Light's gonna have really shitty uptime with this setup. Okay, let's reassess this, because we don't want to have bad Power of the Light uptime. So we might just have to do Crescent Sweep on the front bar and have Ballista on the back bar if we want to maintain good Power of the Light uptime. I think that's what we'll have to do. Yeah, let's do that. The alternative is I could do this, then just have Spear on the front bar like that. Let's try that. And I think I'm gonna have to do a heavy attack on the front bar here, just because crushing weapon doesn't have a cast time, like unlike jabs. So with jabs, we have the advantage of having that cast time for some additional regen to happen. So I might need to do a heavy attack on the front bar here, so let's see how this works. Trying to figure out this rotation here. Also doesn't help that shards isn't actually being thrown half the time. So that was considerably worse. I'm going to try it again because I need to figure out what the rotation actually is going to be like. So for reference, nope, that's not it. So for reference, this was the first parse, this was with jabs, and this is with imbue weapon. So I do have to kind of figure out what the rotation would look like. So I'm actually going to practice on this dummy here just to see what it'll look like. So the back bar rotation should be pretty straightforward. It's obviously this ultimate and poison injection here. Shards isn't going off like half the time. I don't know what's going on with shards. It's not like being thrown half the time. Alright, so let's see. So I obviously want to open with Power of Delight. So what if I do this? That means I won't be able to use shards at all. That's the problem with that rotation, though. I won't be able to use shards at all. Also doesn't leave me much time to heavy attack if I need to. Well, I mean, that rotation works. The problem is I'm not getting any sort of burning light procs because I'm not able to throw down any shards. It also doesn't give me any time to light attack. So nope, quick cast counter abilities is already on. You can tell already with this. It's just it's not like throwing it consistently, so it's whatever. What if I do? So that gives me time to do a heavy attack, but again the problem is then the problem is I still don't have time to throw down any shards. I do want to throw down shards so I can get that burning light setting, burning light passive going. Burning light's up here, rending slashes is here. I don't want to drop rending slashes. I might have to do that though, because the burning light proc is more important. Okay, we'll try that. I'm screwing up this rotation already. Oh, we should reset it. I wanted this to be clean. It's also like half of my ground dots aren't going off properly. Oops. Just rending out of habit. Not a big deal. Nope, I did not use my ulti. Oh god, why am I lagging all of a sudden? Okay, so there was some lag there, so we'll just do that again. I was liking that rotation, but now it's kind of like I'm not using rending slashes, so what should I replace on the front bar with it? Like if I'm not using rending, might as well just put like another like fighter's guild like ability down here or something. I might as well just double slot trap or something. Let's try this again. I actually should probably do charge at the beginning instead of deadly cloak after that heavy attack. Screwed that up. Ran out of stamina there. I don't know if that's because of my own inexperience with the rotation or something else. That rotation doesn't seem to work very well. I mean, it works well, but I only pulled 40.6k, so Burning Light's not doing nearly as much damage as it was earlier. Mainly because we're not using jabs anymore. So now let's explore doing rending, keeping a Adric Spear ability here, but not actually using it. We actually don't know if Acuity is getting nerfed soon. We're on the assumption that it is, but they haven't touched it ever since Clockwork City was released. So we don't know if they're actually going to nerf it or not. If it is getting nerfed, hopefully it's on the PTS before it hits live, so we know about it. But I mean, they've done kind of stuff before where they change things on us last minute, and we don't expect it until the patch goes live. So the good thing is you don't have to gold out your mechanical acuity like armor pieces. You just have to gold out the weapon. But so don't hold off on golding out any sort of armor that you have for acuity until we know for sure that it's not getting nerfed. Let's try this again, and this time we're going to do rending slashes instead of spear shards, but we'll still keep the exact same kind of rotation pattern going. But it seems like using jabs right now is going to be the better option. is also going to be worse on sustain because we don't have spears anymore, using up our magicka. So that gave us a little bit of a reprieve so we can regen our stam, but without that, sustain just got a hell of a lot worse. Another heavy attack here. It seems like you can do 2 heavy attacks if you give up one of your crushing weapon procs. You can do like a heavy attack like this. You would give up your crushing weapon, one of them. That actually wasn't terrible in terms of DPS, but the sustain felt a little bit worse. Okay, so we did 42.4. We had a couple of Burning Light hits, but not that many because we were using Crescent Sweep as our main ultimate. Let's see, regen versus drain, this is about 110. Compare that to this, which was our first parse. It's also about 110, so the sustain was probably about the same here. So it does seem like you can use Crushing Weapon as your spammable, but you're definitely going to have to change up your rotation a little bit, and you will be giving up Spear Shards and Burning Light DPS as a result. So let's see here. So Crushing Weapon here, 1557. Let's see. So you're giving up about 1.1k damage from Burning Light. Where's jabs? 1.4k from jabs. It seems like you are gaining, on the other hand. So let's take a look at the ultimates too. The ultimates here combined is about 1650. Ballista up here is 18. So it seems, it looks like this is ultimately going to be probably the better way to go. But I mean, you can make a crushing weapon rotation work, it looks like, and still do fairly okay. So that is that, I guess. So the last test, because I am starting to get hungry and it is dinner time for me, I'm just going to swap out Reliquin for War Machine. Just to see how War Machine compares to Reliquin right now. And then I'm gonna call it a day. Go get some food. And we will be using just your typical jabs rotation, so we're not going to be using Crushing Weapon for this rotation at all. We'll just see how War Machine does compared to Reliquin. Reliquin does a lot of damage though, so the question is, does that Major Slayer boost make up for it? Reliquin also gives us 2 crit, while War Machine gives us stam and weapon damage, so we'll see which one's more important. Back bar here, we're going to go with Ballista, just so it is a proper comparison. I should save that parse because I think it's on. Yeah, it's going to be deleted. Save it. Okay, so this will be the last parse of the knife, of the night. I'm hungry. Oh wait, did I have my poisons on? Okay, good, I have my poisons on. That would have been embarrassing if I didn't have my poisons on. People want Mechanical Acuity nerf just because it's basically the best in the slot for every single DPS in the game. It's not overperforming by a huge margin though. It's only overperforming, like it's beating out Juliano's by like maybe like 1-2%. It's not a really big margin, and it does require a lot more skill in order to make full use of Mechanical Acuity, which is why I think they're holding off on nerfing Acuity, but I can understand why people want Acuity nerfed from a DPS perspective. Okay, so this is going to be the last part of the night. We're just going to see where War Machine does stacked up against Reliquin on a Stamplar. Oops, wrong button. Oh wait, hold on. I should still be using Crescent Sweep on the back bar, actually. I was thinking one-to-one comparison, which you don't really necessarily need to do. We're looking for best in slot, so we don't really care about one-to-one comparison. Actually, just remembered that. Not a big deal. All right, let's do this again. This time for real. I mean, already just looking at the DPS meter, it doesn't seem to be performing quite as well as Reliquin. Yeah, so it definitely is not able to perform quite at that same level as Reliquin. We're only hitting 37k with Reliquin Mechanical Acuity instead of the 42k, 42.3k that we were hitting with Reliquin. So That should give you an idea of just how strong Reliquant is compared to the other sets in the game right now. The fact that it's able to pull 5k higher. Granted, we were using a lower power ulti, we were using Crescent Sweep instead of Ballista, but still, that major Slayer is enough to kind of offset the damage there. So Reliquant is definitely going to get nerfed. By how much, I don't know, but it should definitely be seeing a nerf soon. Alright, so that is it for this stream for tonight. I believe we are running VAA as a training run in Hellfire. I think we still need 1 DPS, so we might not be able to be doing that. But if I don't stream tonight, it'll be tomorrow night for our Hoth progression with Hellfire. That's going to be from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. We might go over a little bit depending on how close we are to finishing Assembly General if we get to it. So thank you everybody for watching, especially to everybody who hung out for the whole 3 hours that I've been streaming. I'm going to go grab some food, and I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll try to get on the PTS again tomorrow, do some Magplar testing, especially that Dark Flare Solar Barrage build that I was thinking about a little bit earlier. So have a great night, guys, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.